What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to cover a Spider-Man book because you guys have been asking me to sit down and cover some more Spider-Man books, but I felt like we should cover some books that people have not truly covered on YouTube yet. And so after sitting down for a good while, looking through different kinds of Spider-Man books, I remember that back in 1991, there was an annual crossover that took place in all three Spider-Man annuals: Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, and also Web of Spider-Man. This was a Spider-Man, Black Panther, Iron Man team-up story arc called the Vibranium Vendetta. And here's the catch. Our heroes are going up against the Kingpin, the Ghost, but also going up against Ultron 13 as well. It's a very interesting story arc where at first I was kind of wondering, could this be an actual good story arc? But as I went through it, it's actually pretty decent. It's not bad, but it's not super great. It's right in the middle. And I feel like you guys might enjoy this book a lot. So here we go. The Spider-Man 1991 annual crossover, The Vibranium Vendetta. And so the first chapter we have to dive into is Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 25, where we pick up with Peter Parker being Spider-Man, and he sees two guys currently moving some boxes out of the science building of the Empire State University. Now, for Peter Parker, he believes those two guys must be crooks. He goes down there, he beats down on them, but then after doing that, when he goes to look into the bag that they were carrying, he finds a chair that has been mostly melted. And so for Peter, he's wondering what in the world is going on here. But then he's confronted by a character known as Arthur Dearborn. Now, Arthur Dearborn is going to be very important for this book. But for right now, all you need to know is that he works for Roxxon. Now, if you know your Marvel comics, Roxxon is a very shady company. Anytime they tell the world they're trying to build something or do something to actually help the world out, they have evil plans behind those plans. Now, for Arthur, he just got hired by Roxxon, and his goal is to watch over their latest experiment. And so apparently he had hired those two guys to move things out of the lab that was no longer needed. And so you have Arthur tell Spider-Man how he can understand why it did look kind of shady what they were doing in the middle of the night, but those two guys are actually innocent. And so you have Peter leave and then apologize. But this begins our adventure into figuring out what is Roxxon actually up to. Now, the book does remind us that Peter Parker is married. And the reason why I'm saying that because you do have Peter Parker going back home after the whole Roxxon situation at Empire State University. But when he does get back home, he is confronted by Mary Jane, who wants to have some, alone time in the bedroom with her husband. So Peter Parker is about to have some fun times in his bedroom with his wife. Now we have to jump over to the Kingpin. Now, let's not forget, the Kingpin is always one of those big-time Spider-Man bad guys, but also for Daredevil as well. But we see the Kingpin call up a character known as Ghost. Now, Ghost is a cool character. If you are trying to sabotage a corporation, you call in Ghost. He's the best man for the job. Now, the actual origin of Ghost has not been told to us. Now, yes, there was a point in time where he did tell a character, Moonstone, his actual origin, but let's not forget, he did not trust Moonstone at that moment in time. So we're kind of left to believe that he gave her a false origin story. So with that being said, we don't know his actual origin. Now, the reason why Kingpin had called up Ghost is like I said earlier. If you were trying to sabotage a company, you call in Ghost for the job. Now, for the Kingpin, he found out that Roxxon is working on a very interesting kind of project that could bring in a lot of profit. And so for the Kingpin, he wants to know what they are working on, but to also make sure that the Ghost almost does destroy their ability to reproduce what they're trying to create, so that the Kingpin will be the only person being able to, make a profit from the Roxxon's new idea. We do get a couple of pages that does remind us that Peter Parker does attend Empire State University. Now, while he is trying to leave and actually go meet up with Mary Jane for a huge Roxxon event, you have Peter be stopped by two guys who work in a different department at the Empire State University, and that would be agriculture. Now, these two scientists in this department, their main goal is to find a way to accelerate plant growth. And that's going to be really important once we get into the final chapter of the book, of the story arc. But you do have Peter be very intrigued in what the guys are working on. But like I said, he has to go attend a Roxxon event because he also works at the Daily Bugle. And so he was kind of assigned to take photos of the actual event. But now we jump over to the Roxxon event, where we pick up with Mary Jane having a conversation with T'Challa. So this brings Black Panther into the actual story arc. Now, for Black Panther, while having this conversation with Mary Jane, he tells us why he's here in New York. You see, he got word that apparently Roxxon is trying to produce a cheaper version of vibranium. Now, that is actually a huge problem for T'Challa because vibranium is mainly in Wakanda. It's really their whole economy there. If Roxxon comes out and says, hey, listen, we have a substitute cheaper version of vibranium, it can hurt the economy of Wakanda. And so for T'Challa, he's trying his best to see if they actually had created it, but also find a way to stop it before it hurts Wakanda's economy. Now, you do have Peter arrive at the event and take a photo of his wife with T'Challa, but you also have Iron Man appear as well. Now, we're not really told here why Iron Man is here for, but apparently he had to be here because he has some kind of worries about what Roxxon is trying to do. Now, we do get a page that does tell us that Iron Man does know Arthur Dearborn very well, because actually, Arthur Dearborn first appeared in Iron Man number 143 all the way back in 1980, but he only had a few appearances before this book right here. Now, for Arthur, he wants to know why Iron Man is here for, and something else I should probably mention is that when it comes to Iron Man, the public does not know that Tony Stark is Iron Man. They still believe that Iron Man is Tony Stark's bodyguard. But by the next page, you have the event go off where we do pick up with a character known as Jonas Hall. Now, Jonas Hall is actually a VP for Roxxon, and so he begins to show off what they were able to create, a new form of vibranium, a cheaper form they're calling new form. Now, they show off how great it still is, being able to stop bullets very easily. The problem is, in the middle of their actual presentation, you have Jonas get called away for something happening in the lab in the Empire State University. And so once you have Jonas being able to walk into the actual lab, this is where we learn that new form is not as great as Roxxon wants the world to believe. You see, we do learn that a raw version of new form have the ability to melt metal around it. And so, for example, this lab had a big rule. No metal allowed. The problem was a scientist walked into the room wearing a watch. That watch began to melt into his arm. But things get even worse because to you, you're kind of like, okay, it's just the raw version of new form. But the actual, supposed to be great form of new form is also unstable as well because sooner or later it's going to decay. Now, for Jonas, he tells Arthur there's nothing to worry about because they have been treating the new form with microwaves to kind of stop the idea of new form decaying down the road. But the problem is, once you have Arthur leave the room, another scientist tells us, the readers, that microwaves are not really stopping the decaying of new form. It's only slowing it down until later on, microwaves will no longer work on it. And so the problem is if Roxxon goes out in the world with new form and begin to build buildings, planes, trains, and the list goes on, and they're telling the world that new form is never going to decay, it would be a big fat lie because sooner or later, new form will decay and those planes, those buildings, those trains will fall apart, causing havoc across the board. But for Jonas, he says by the time those things happen, Roxxon would have made plenty of money. And so he does plan on going ahead and giving out this unstable metal to the world. Now, we do get a quick page where we do pick up with Ultron. Now, you have Ultron currently being transported to well, possibly a prison. Either way, you do have Ultron being able to break free. Now, for Ultron, he realized that after losing to the West Coast Avengers back in issue number 68, that he needs a better armor. And so he finds a newspaper that was talking about vibranium that's being produced by Roxxon. And so he plans to add vibranium to his already great armor suit. And so here goes Ultron on a new adventure. But now we jump back over to Spider-Man. Now for Spider-Man, once he heard that Roxxon was involved with what was happening on the Empire State University Science Lab grounds, he knew that he had to go back there at night to get a better look to see what they were actually doing. And the reason why, because like I said earlier, Roxxon is a very shady company. You already know that if Roxxon is trying to do something, most likely they have an evil plan up their sleeve as well. And so you have Peter go back there as Spider-Man, but when he does, Black Panther is there as well. And we already know why Panther is there because, again, he hates the idea that Roxxon is trying to create a cheaper version of vibranium. But after you have our characters introduce themselves to one another, you then have both Spider-Man and Black Panther realize that there's somebody in the lab right now of the Empire State University that's currently being used by Roxxon, and they're trying to do damage to the actual place. And we already know who it is. It's Ghost, because he was hired by Kingpin to blow the place up, to sabotage the company, to make sure they will not be able to reproduce and create more of their cheaper version of vibranium. But also, he has to make sure he gets their plans and give those plans over to Kingpin. Either way, you do have Spider-Man and Black Panther realize they got to go in there and stop Ghost. Now, for Ghost, he believes that he's way better than Spider-Man, way better than Black Panther. But the problem is Spider-Man has a spider sense. And so even though you have Ghost go Ghost like turn invisible and try to sneak up from behind on Spider-Man, it doesn't work because of Peter Parker's spider sense. Now, once you have Panther and also Spider-Man begin to work together and beat down on Ghost, they also realize they can have the better advantage on him if they turn off the lights, because Panther has been trained to fight in the dark, and Peter, he has his spider sense. For Ghost, he is not that well trained to fight in the dark. But the problem is that once you have Spider-Man and Black Panther trying their best to get the jump on Ghost in the dark, Arthur Dearborn was nearby the lab. He overheard all the noise that those three characters were making. And so he walks over to the lab. And when he does, he turns the lights back on. Now, for Peter and Black Panther, they were easily seen by Ghost and they were shot at. But while you try to have our two heroes recover after being hit by Ghost energy blast, he turns around and hits Arthur Dearborn. Now, at first, we're left to believe that Arthur Dearborn was officially killed off just like that, but he is not. Instead, he turns into another character, his alter ego, better known as Centurion. Now, Centurion is a very interesting character, but unfortunately did not have that many appearances in Marvel Comics. But let's sit down and have a brief conversation about the actual character. Now let's talk a tad bit about Arthur Dearborn. Now Arthur Dearborn first appeared in Iron Man issue number 143 in the year 1980. Now for Arthur, he worked for Roxxon, and his big idea was he knew that sooner or later there was going to be a war against different countries over fuel. And so he realized that if he's able to find a new source of energy to give the world to prevent that war from actually happening, he'll be a great scientist. And that led into the Star Well. Now, the Star Well was this huge space station that was going to absorb solar energy and send that solar energy down to Earth. It was supposed to be a nice, clean, free type of energy. If not free, at least it is clean and still keep everyone at bay from going at each other's neck. The problem was Roxxon was down with building the space station, but the problem was they felt like they could not get enough people to actually work on that space station at all times. And so they say, hey, Arthur, we have a great idea. What if we turned you into a being that's full of microwaves? Because here's the thing, once you become that kind of being, you won't need food, you won't need sleep. You'll be able to run the entire station by yourself. And for Arthur, a man who loves scientists, who loves to work so much, he was down in a matter of seconds. And he went through that experiment and came out as, well, the character we know him as right now, Centurion. But now we have to jump over to Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 11 for the next chapter of this story arc. Now, as we go into this chapter, the battle continues on between Black Panther and Spider-Man fighting against Centurion. Now, while the battle does go on, you have our two heroes begin to struggle, but luckily for our heroes, Iron Man arrives. Now, Iron Man knows how to handle Centurion because they had battled in the past. And so once you have Iron Man being able to stop Centurion and turn him back into his regular human form, which is Arthur Dearborn, you have Arthur explain why he attacked Black Panther and Spider-Man, because he had no idea that he had regained his powers. He thought he lost his powers completely. And so with them being back, it was a huge surprise that kind of blocked his judgment and helped him realize that maybe Black Panther and Spider-Man are not actually bad guys. And really, they were here to help out Roxxon because they saw Ghost trying to blow the place up. Now, once you have everyone calm down, Peter Parker says maybe they should stay there until they are able to figure out what in the world did Ghost want from Roxxon. But you have Dearborn say, no, y'all gotta leave. Like, thanks for being here, but like, we don't need your help, so please leave. And so they do leave. Now, right after that, we do get reminded that Arthur is telling us that the raw form of new form is not safe around other forms of metal, because a guard who got hurt thanks to Ghost, his pendant begins to melt. It's reminding us that new form melts metal around it. And so it's really Arthur saying that he's very concerned for what Roxxon is trying to push because it does not seem like it's actually ready for the public yet. But after all of that, you did have our heroes agree to meet back up once they were able to collect all the information they needed to figure out what Roxxon is actually up to. And so for Peter Parker, he wants to go home and rest. And Mary Jane's out for the night. When the man goes home, he has leftover squid, he watched some TV, and tries to have a quiet night for once. But now we jump back over to Ghost and also Kingpin. Now, you do have the Kingpin ask Ghost one more time to get another sample of what Roxxon is working on, the new form of Vibranium. But at the same time, you also have the Kingpin tell Ghost you need to make sure that you blow up their labs so that they are unable to try to reproduce what they had already created. And you have Ghost agree to go through the Kingpin's deal. Now, for the Kingpin, he's actually scared of Ghost because Ghost is somebody you don't want to mess with, especially if you are a company man. But for the Kingpin, he's hoping that Ghost is able to pull it off. Now, I want to jump back over to Ultron because Ultron will become more important as we go through the story arc. At first, he was kind of like a background character. That all changes at this moment right here because you have Ultron building up an army of robots to help him secure a huge portion of the new form. Because again, he wants to add this new form of vibranium to his armor. And so it's the book reminding us, hey, don't forget, Ultron is here, and Ultron is about to make a move very soon. Now, something else I do want to mention that when it comes to Ultron, he's really big on only robots should be ruling the earth. Humans should be killed off completely. And so for him right now, this is another step to hopefully reach that goal. Now, for Peter Parker, he also hears that apparently Roxxon is going to move their stuff over to a more secure lab. Now, with that kind of information, that tells the heroes, especially Spider-Man, where they have to go now if they want to be able to collect more information about what Roxxon is actually up to. And so while you have Iron Man arriving at the base while flying, you have Spider-Man and Black Panther being able to sneak into the base by going on the ground. Now, as soon as they do get on the base, they realize that there are some guards coming from behind them. Now, they believe at first that these guards work for Roxxon, not knowing that these guards are actually robots that Ultron had created. And they look so real, you're kind of like, are they human or are they robots? But for our heroes, they don't know that yet. And so right now, they believe they're just human guards trying to protect the place. Now, inside the actual base, you have Ghost trying to pull off the mission, trying to get a sample for the Kingpin, but also blow the place up. But the problem is he's confronted by Ultron. And for Ghost, he's kind of like, wait a second, I was not really prepared to fight against you. I mean, yes, I kind of am because you're in a robot suit or you're a robot, and Iron Man is also kind of like a robot. So, maybe if I use what I had for him on you, I can still win this battle. But at the same time for Ghost, he was not prepared to fight somebody else except for the heroes like Spider-Man, Black Panther, and also Iron Man. But now we can jump back outside the actual base where you have Spider-Man and Black Panther working together to fight against the army of robots that Ultron brought with him. Now, while you have our heroes fighting against these robots, remember, at first they believed they were humans. But as they're smashing down on these robots, they're kind of like, hey, wait a second. These guys are robots. Now, while you have our heroes fighting against the robots inside the base, Arthur can see what's happening outside, and he realized that he needs to call it an emergency because right now the whole entire facility is being attacked by different people. Spider-Man, Black Panther, Army of Robots, Ultron, and also Ghost, including Iron Man as well. Now, for Arthur, he wants to make sure that no one is able to get their hands on the information about what is the actual procedure of creating new form. And so we see a few people working for Roxxon trying to transport the actual computer holding that data over to a helicopter to get it the heck out of there. But Iron Man is there. He's all like, no, guys, listen, take the plane down right now because I need to know what in the world is going on here. Now, of course, you do have Arthur change into his good old centurion form to fight against Iron Man. So now we get a round two between those two characters. Inside the actual facility, we do pick up with Ultron and Ghost continuing to battle against each other. Now, for Ghost, he tries to go invisible, hoping to catch Ultron by surprise. But Ultron is a smart robot, and he was able to turn on the sprinklers, which of course shows where Ghost is at. You have Ultron shoot Ghost out of the building, and Ghost's whole entire tech suit is no longer working properly. So he has to retreat. So once again, he failed when it came to doing his mission for the Kingpin. Now for Ultron, he also has to retreat because now the entire facility knows about him being there, but also they're saying, hey, we have no idea what that is, but we should call the Avengers. And for Ultron, he knows if the Avengers appear, most likely he is going to lose. But getting back over to the battle between Iron Man and Centurion, you do have the two characters continue to battle until Centurion's attack does hit the helicopter that's holding that computer, that's holding that data that he wants to protect. Now, you have Iron Man being able to actually bring the chopper down. But after doing that, you did have Iron Man being able to access that computer to gather some of the data that's actually on it. Now, for Centurion, he said, hey, what you are doing is completely illegal. I should have you guys arrested right now, or at least take you to court. But you have Iron Man say, do you really want to arrest us? Do you really want to go to court? Because if you do, I'm telling you right now, most likely there's information on here that you do not want to get out to the public. But while you have those characters arguing outside the actual facility or Empire State University, it seems like, you do have Ultron very upset that he was not able to get his hands on that vibranium, the new form. But then he's confronted by an assistant that works for the Kingpin and says, hey, Kingpin wants to talk to you. I think it's time for you guys to come together and work together because y'all both have a common goal. So now we have to jump into the final chapter for today's video, Web of Spider-Man Annual number 7. Now, we pick up with the Kingpin and also Ultron having that first big meeting between partners. Now, for the Kingpin, he's kind of like, hey, you want something that I want as well too. Why don't we work together so both of us can get the actual item needed? Now, Ultron agrees to help the Kingpin out. Like, yes, I'll get this new form vibranium for us both. But for Ultron, he's also saying in his head right now, like, after I give you what you want, and once I'm able to reach my goal of having a new armor that's even stronger than my current armor, once I am able to begin to get rid of all humans across the board, Kingpin, you are still going to die. Now, he does not tell the Kingpin that, but we already know Ultron is kind of like, yeah, I'll work with you for right now, but down the road, I'm going to kill you. Now, getting back over to our heroes, they're looking over the information that Iron Man was able to collect from that computer. The problem was that computer had very limited information about the current Roxxon project. So for our heroes, unfortunately, they're not really able to learn everything what Roxxon is actually up to. Now, for Black Panther, he's still worried about the idea of this new kind of vibranium being out there because if it does go public, it's going to ruin Wakanda in so many different ways. Now, for Iron Man, he's also concerned about who in the world sent that army of robots to fight against Black Panther and Spider-Man earlier. They have no idea that Ultron is actually involved in this mess now with them. We do get a quick page to remind us that Ultron is, well, he's making more robots that look very human, but also it's him saying, listen, I need an army of robots if I'm going to be able to accomplish this mission that I put myself on. So yes, he now has another army of robots. But now we jump over to Peter Parker. Now you have Peter Parker walking around Empire State University, and he tells us that he was supposed to meet up with Black Panther right after class today as Spider-Man, but Black Panther did not show up. And so for Peter, he's wondering where in the world is Black Panther at? Now, while you have Peter walking around, those same scientists we saw earlier who work in the agriculture department call Peter over to tell Peter how great their experiment is going. Like the plants have grown at a very fast rate. And that's going to be somewhat important for the ending of this book. But then Peter realized where Black Panther is most likely at. Black Panther most likely went to go confront the VP of Roxxon about what they are doing when it comes to their fake version of Vibranium. It's going to hurt the economy of Wakanda. And really, Peter Parker called it right because you have the Black Panther going over to the VP of Roxxon saying, hey, listen, what you guys are doing is hurting my country economy. Like, can you please stop it right now? But for the VP of Roxxon, he's all like, no, I am not going to stop that at all. But you have Black Panther say, fine, I will use more political means to find a way to halt your production. And so you have Panther leave. Now, for the VP of Roxxon, he does not like the idea that Wakanda might have a way to actually shut down their production. And so he tells you guys like, hey, I need you to get the jump on T'Challa and make sure he does not get back up again. But it's T'Challa. He's the Black Panther. He's able to defend himself. And luckily for Black Panther, Spider-Man was nearby to actually help out. But now we jump over to Iron Man. Now you have Iron Man waiting to meet up with Black Panther and also Spider-Man. But he's waiting outside the new secure facility that Roxxon has for this project. Now while waiting for them to catch up, you then have Centurion walk over to Iron Man. Now while the two characters are talking, you then have the military just roll up out of nowhere. Now for Iron Man, it's kind of like, wait a second. Why in the world is the military here for? Now, we already know this is not the military. These are the robots that look so human because of Ultron. They're going through some kind of master scheme to keep the heroes out. And really, just like that, it goes into motion because you didn't have a force field being placed around the entire facility, not allowing Iron Man nor Centurion to actually get inside. Now, Centurion's actually able to go through the force field because, well, he's microwave. And so he was able to transport himself inside the actual building. But as soon as he does get inside, he is then confronted by, well, Ultron. Now, for Centurion, he never met Ultron before. And so this is the first time you have these two characters meeting one another, and you also have him trying his best to actually fight against Ultron. Now, while fighting against him, you then have Centurion realize that the metal in the actual building is beginning to melt. Because remember, the raw form, a new form, makes metal around them melt. And so for Centurion, he realized this is going to be a huge problem when it comes to the entire Empire State University area. And so you have Centurion leave the actual warehouse to go back outside to meet up with Iron Man. Now, for Spider-Man and Black Panther, they stay behind and they deal with more of the robots that were created by Ultron. Now, again, at first, they believe it's a group of regular humans. But once they start battling against this group, they begin to realize, no, once again being tricked, these guys are actually robots in disguise. And so you have Spider-Man and Black Panther being able to work together to actually deal with that problem over there. But now we jump over to Iron Man and Centurion, because you have those two characters being able to follow where Ultron came from, all the way back over to his actual base. And so once you have Iron Man and also Centurion being able to arrive at that location, Ultron was ready for them. He's all like, please, I knew that sooner or later you guys might try to follow me and figure out it was me. And I brought a weapon along with me to make sure I can use to take you guys out. But getting back over to Spider-Man and Black Panther, they're still at the Empire State University, and they're seeing firsthand what's happening to the different buildings around the actual area. Because right now, the melting effect of new form is affecting all the buildings at that university. And so different parts of buildings are beginning to fall apart because all those different metal pieces being used to help support those buildings are melting away. Now, you do have Spider-Man get a call from the Kingpin, who called the university, who then found Spider-Man and said, hey, dude, you got a call from the Kingpin. Now, we do learn why the Kingpin is helping out Spider-Man and Black Panther, because he feels like, well, Ultron is going to betray him, or possibly already has. And so you have the Kingpin tell Spider-Man, who then tells Iron Man how to shut down Ultron's armor suit. And once you have Iron Man being able to do that, you have Iron Man and Centurion grabbed the crate that he had stolen earlier and took it back over to the Empire State University. Now, the ending of this book is really great because you do have our heroes being able to come together to make a game plan. And their game plan is to find a way to get rid of New Form completely. Now, you have Spider-Man being the guy saying, listen, why don't we take all the New Form and put it at the core of the earth? It'll melt away completely and be unable to affect any metal across the world. Now, at first, the only person it seemed like would be able to do that would be Centurion. But he says no because, hey, I still work for Roxxon. And so you have Iron Man being able to dig a hole into the core of the earth and take all that New Form and bury it down there. And then they close the hole and the day is saved. Literally, the story wraps up just like that. And you have our heroes go their separate ways, but also they were able to deal with the whole new idea of a cheaper version of Vibranium. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.